Women is led by co-chairs Dharti Arvind Desai, who is an entrepreneur, investor, and current president of TIE New York, and Smita Siddhanti, who is an entrepreneur and past president of TIE Washington, D.C. Under their leadership, stellar management, and executive committees, they drive the mission forward to embrace, engage, and empower women in more than 10 countries in over 75 cities globally. Thai Women Global brings you the second season of Thai Women Connect, which is a mini series and focuses on strategies for women entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs to help get ready for opportunities in the changing workplace. In monthly fireside chats, we'll be covering an array of topics like seizing opportunities, strategies for winning in challenging times, fundraising, marketing, organizational priorities, current technology, building resilience, and sustainability plans. Participants will walk away with the tangible tips on how to grow and adapt for changing circumstances. The general format for these sessions will be each of these sessions will be 45 minutes long with 25 minutes of targeted discussion and about 15 minutes for Q&A. Mini-series co-chairs Smita Bagla, who's an entrepreneur and past president of Thai SoCal, and Kanchana Raman, who's an entrepreneur and past president of Thai Atlanta, will take you through these virtual sessions which have been carefully curated to help you navigate the complex world of current operating environment. To kick off the 2021 season, Kanchana Raman will be moderating a chat with Susan Johnson, EVP of Global Supply Chain at AT&T, to share her perspectives on delivering on customer promises amidst a pandemic through an innovative and resilient supply chain. After the interview, Smita Bagla will be fielding questions from the audience for Susan. Before I turn it over to Kanchana, a quick word on the Global Pitch Competition for 2021. Applications are now live on our centralized website, thaiwomen.org. So I encourage all the women entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs to apply and compete for the prize money in the value of $100,000, $25,000, and $10,000 this year. Thank you, and over to you, Kanchana.
Thank you, Kanika. Thanks. Susan, welcome. Good to see you again after a long time. I don't know if you remember, we first met when we served on the Telecom Industry Association board many years ago. And I still remember our conversations during our breaks. We discussed food, fitness, fashion. Those were the good times. And I hope we get to meet in person sometime soon.
Yeah, lots of memories, Kanchana. It's so great to see you, at least virtually again.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome. And thank you for agreeing to do this for Thai Women Global. We are part of a global chapter, which is 40 years old, but Thai Women is about 2 years. So we're really committed to promoting women entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs. And again, we're truly honored to have you here today, Susan. And congratulations to AT&T for being named among Time's most influential companies of 2021.
Yeah, great success. Thank you for that, Kanchana.
I just read it, so that's amazing. Again, no surprise. So just to give you a perspective, Susan, we have a global audience that is dialed in today from India, from Dubai, and of course stateside. And we have a host of entrepreneurs, millennials, Gen Z. So it's a very wide range of audience that is usually participating in our mini Connect series. So I just want to give you that perspective and also the audience as to what it is we're going to be discussing today. So in the new normal of working from home, consumers have higher demands for their wireline and wireless networks. When the internet is latent or down, very few consumers stop and think or wonder, is this a supply chain challenge, of increased network access from home? And as a result, companies like AT&T needed to adapt quickly to higher demands of consumers, including adjustments to the supply chain. And like we say, supply chain has been invisible for a long time, but suddenly everybody is talking about it. In 2010, AT&T had over 95 million subscribers, and in 2020, AT&T has over 180 million subscribers, almost double. For most of us, supply chain here is like, like I said, it's invisible, so we want to learn more. Today, we have the privilege of speaking with Susan Johnson, who has been with AT&T for 20 plus years and is currently the Executive Vice President, Global Connections and Supply Chain, and is responsible for a $70 billion spend. Her team manages strategic sourcing, purchasing, supplier diversity, sustainability, and supply chain logistics. Susan has an MBA from Wharton. So Susan, you went to Wharton, so which is around a 10% acceptance rate even today, right? We have a global audience here. So tell us about your younger self, the vision to go to an Ivy League, and how has it shaped your career?
Well, Kanchana, thank you for that question. You know, I think women surviving and excelling in a business world sometimes means that we have to focus more on our resumes than some of our counterparts. And so I can remember at the time having conversations with a lot of people of why go back to school, why go to an Ivy League. And sometimes branding that resume can help us. Women tend to be need more flexibility in their work lives, more in and out of the workforce. And so I was a very hard charging female in my youth. I was ruthlessly focused on female rights and wanted to make sure that I had the opportunity to really make my mark. I think I've softened a lot with age. Let's thanks for the goodness of having kids, so we can talk about that. But I do think the branding of my resume with Wharton, the contacts that I made, and the continued just learning, which all of us, whether it's through school or everyday life, continually learning is such an important part of us staying relevant and continuing to grow. And so lots of great contacts. I still stay in touch, and I've got a big reunion coming up, unfortunately, virtually.
Yeah, of course. But it's only a question of time, Susan. We're all vaccinated, so we're going to get
I'm at least back in the office a couple days a week, so that's been a positive. Starting to see people again, it feels good.
No, that is great. It's encouraging to hear that that you guys are back at work. Of course, work never stopped, right? I mean, always on connectivity. So, so that definitely, I think whether we are in the office or home, the work continues.
Yeah, Kanchana, and we just had so many changes at AT&T. I feel like I learned a whole bunch over the last year just about how quickly things can change for business and how to try to be adaptable to respond to some of these changes.
I know they always say a resilient supply chain is vital in supporting operations, right? And as a leader in supply chain, share some of your experiences with us.
Well, maybe I'll start out and just talk a little bit, Kanchana, about how much things change for AT&T. So as being in charge of global connections and supply chain for AT&T, you mentioned some of my functions, but if I were to simplify it, our job is to make sure that we are making sure that all goods and services are delivered for all of our customers across AT&T. And so we are responding quickly to just all the changes going on in the business. Things changed quickly on a dime, just to focus on a couple of things. First of all, the products and services that our customers want changed drastically. Mobile devices, Wi-Fi hotspots, broadband connectivity for homes. We had a surge in demand that was just crazy when people started living, working, and schooling from home. We had a lot of business customers that needed a whole different business model set up. Call centers were shutting down. So call center cloud opportunities for our customer, WebEx calling experience with AT&T Voice, our Office at Hand platform. All of this just skyrocketed with demand. And, our capacity needs fundamentally changed. All of us working and schooling from home, we had just a surge in demand that was absolutely crazy. We talk about demand in concepts that are hard to understand. The data we use now is that about 486 petabytes of data crosses our network on an average day, which is just shows you that surge in demand. Well, what does that translate to? That's about 100 million 2-hour high-def movies every day crossing AT&T's network. And it was also a challenge because some of that demand was in places that it hadn't been before. Most of the offices are in downtown areas where we're used to that surging demand. We had a lot of surging demand in urban areas and more rural areas. So trying to change the dynamics of our network to meet that surge was also challenging. And then of course we had to fundamentally change our delivery model. We used to have hundreds of stores open across the US. We shut them down. People were not going to stores. So it was about direct fulfillment, shipping things out directly to people. And then of course there was this whole concept of PPE. Now I know a lot about CPE. I didn't know anything about PPE, but very quickly we had to turn on a dime and set up a whole new supply chain to figure out how to get masks and hand sanitizer and gloves, all of these things to protect our workforce, but also our customers. We had to turn on a dime and set that up. And so just crazy changes across the board in what happened across AT&T. And then my team, we were all hands on deck. All of us working remotely, trying to figure out how to manage the supply chain as borders were shutting down, shipping industry was shutting down. It was just such an absolutely crazy time. I can distinctly remember the Chinese New Year of 2020.
Yes.
For anybody that sort of is in business, we all prepare for the Chinese New Year. Things shut down in a lot of areas of China for about 2 weeks. Well, we were ready for that 2-week shutdown, and then things just didn't come back online. And we quickly saw what I call the rolling blackout, which is really the rolling shutdown, Kanchana, across different areas of the globe. We were tracking it daily. Chinese borders were shutting down, then we had Mexican borders shutting down, then we had Italy just went into full lockdown. So trying to figure out what goods and services were coming from different parts of the country and how we could get out in front of that, was an experience that I will absolutely never forget.
So was that the first 24 hours when you had to make all these decisions, Susan? I mean, what was I know we had no ramp time, but just curious to see, an organization like AT&T and you at the leadership and supply chain, what kind of ramp time did you have? I mean, how quickly did you respond to this?
Kanchana, you're not quick enough in some ways. I think we were in denial. I personally was probably in denial. We've all seen this threat of pandemics happen multiple times. I can vividly remember Ebola, being terrified of Ebola. But we've had these false starts where we think things are getting bad. Somehow the world has recovered faster. I think that in many cases, at least me personally, I was in denial on how bad things were going to get, how quickly. And so it was this realization that things were getting so bad starting in China. And I think we quickly then said, okay, all hands on deck. I need a full rundown of where every critical product is being delivered. And I need to know what country it's in. I need to know what border it's crossing. I need to understand what options we have for diversity. So I was trying to manage the supply side. At the same time, I was tracking the drastic change in the demand side. Well, our demand for Wi-Fi hotspots just tripled. Can we get another supplier of Wi-Fi hotspots? Where are they going to come from? How quickly we can get them? How quickly can we deliver them? And so it was just an absolute crazy time where I think and I hope that we're all going to be smarter coming out of it. But it left its mark. It really did on my whole team, I think.
So not only on that, but also the different usage patterns, right? From work from home to keeping us all functioning. I mean, the connectivity, the critical connectivity. So besides procuring, you also had to deal with this part of it.
We did. My team also does a lot of the global connections, which is the access side, all of the global roaming and all of the access that supports our customers globally. And so that shift and a surge in demand and then the shift in where the demand was happening was another unique challenge on augmenting a lot of the capacity in the pipes, if you will, that are serving different areas of the world and different areas of the country. And the hard part was, Kanchana, in some cases we needed to augment capacity, but businesses did not have somebody on-prem to let us in. So there was a lot of creative solutioning on, okay, how are we going to work this? How are we going to solve this problem? Can we get somebody to at least unlock the door for us? just incredible dynamics. Which customers are going to let us in? How do we feel comfortable getting in? I mean, you all know that I think the research was unfolding. We started out in denial about masks in the US. Took us a while to get there. And so, just absolutely crazy time where we all learned, I hope, how to stay connected even when you can't physically be in the same presence with people.
I was thinking about the AT&T is also a public safety partner with FirstNet. So, and what role did FirstNet play in supporting the first responders during the pandemic? I mean, that is huge.
Yeah, Kanchana, maybe a little bit of background on this because people outside the U.S. may not be familiar, but AT&T won a contract a couple of years ago. We are the provider of devices, equipment, and connectivity for all of the first responders in the United States. Now, I don't want to say that all of our customers aren't critical, but frankly, during the pandemic, there was a different lens on how we made sure that we were solving the needs for our first responders. Because you can imagine what life was like if you were a fireman or an ambulance worker, an EMS, a first responder in a hospital during the craziness of COVID turning up. We had about 750 requests in 2020 from public safety, everything from quarantine centers that needed to be set up, drive-through testing sites for COVID-19, vaccination centers. We also provided a lot of stand-up connectivity for these new hospitals that were being put in place.
The makeshift hospitals.
Sorry, say again?
Makeshift hospitals?
Yes, makeshift hospitals. So remember we had these naval hospital shifts that were being set up in New York and some in Los Angeles.
Right.
We had to get connectivity for all of their machinery to work and be connected quickly. We had other hospitals being set up at different locations in New York. So all of this happening on a dime with both the right equipment and the connectivity for all those first responders was just such an urgent need for AT&T to figure out how to solve that problem and to make sure that we were there for those first responders. And, I know globally, all of us, our hearts just go out to everybody that has been in this first response to this pandemic. Given the personal self-sacrifice that everyone was making, AT&T really needed to make sure we stood up and that we were quickly fulfilling all of their needs to make sure that they could provide service to all of the people that needed the help globally.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, hats off. 2020 March seems so far away, yet it seems like it's yesterday. So it's a very interesting journey, and glad to be here. Fast forward, glad to be around and praying for everybody else, and especially India. We are right now in the center of everything that's happening, and I know there are a lot of folks that have dialed in from India. So I think everybody is praying and wishing for a speedy recovery and a turnaround.
Yeah, Kanchana, I'm thinking about everyone in India. We've just been following it through the news, and my heart is breaking for all of what we are reading. I think every country has gone through its own surge and its own challenge, but particularly for India right now, my prayers are with everyone that's got family, friends, and relatives. We're also struggling through just how we continue to operate with a lot of our operations and support in India. Terrible time.
Yes, thank you, Susan. Appreciate it. So let's get to our, talking about connectivity, right? With 5G, people have been talking about remote health and robotic surgeries. So, when we think about 4G, right? I mean, it brought in innovations like Uber, Snapchat, FaceTime. What are the possibilities with 5G? What is 5G going to enable for society?
5G is a hot topic right now, and for those of us that don't follow it as closely, or for people that are tracking, it sounds like just another generation of wireless technology. We've seen 5 of them now. But maybe my advice to some of the entrepreneurs out there is to really ramp up your imagination with 5G. Now that AT&T owns HBO and Warner Studios, I like to use a lot of my storytelling and to use movies, because I think movies can really help us expand our imagination. So whether I think about some of the futuristic movies that I've seen in the past, I think the next generation of wireless is really going to enable, through lower latency and capacity enhancements, a full revolution for consumers and businesses. So I don't know who's seen Minority Report. That's one of my favorites. You know, kind of the interactive screens that you can see in front of you that really help you to have real-time, low latency information with voice search, or whether it's the really cool connected cars from some of the Batman movies, or whether we think about just some of the robots that are going to be enabled in our lives, whether in factories or in our personal homes. You know, I can picture mirrors in the retail space that will help us try on clothes without even taking our garments off. And
with the pandemic, I think that'll be very important.
Wouldn't that be important, right? You don't have to touch it. I don't have to like take my clothes off, but I can see what that color looks like on me, see what that style looks on me. I think there's going to be a lot of immersive, interactive experiences for tourism and your future amusement parks, or augmented reality experiences that are going to change how we think about training in schools. And so part of the message that I love about 5G is just expand your imagination. For those of us that are thinking about new business models, I do think that 5G is going to enable a whole bunch of new business models that were not possible in the past. And for all of us that are also trying to stay relevant in the workplace, there's some astounding statistics about how the workforce is going to change. One I saw recently is that about 20 million manufacturing jobs in the US are going to be replaced by robots by 2030.
So one is we were talking about offshoring, but now we're talking about
automation and robotics, big in the factory space. So all of that, Kanchana, enabled by more spectrum and more connection points, which means that we're going to get speeds up to 1 gigabit per second. That's just astounding fast speeds on a wireless network. And with this new concept called edge computing, and for those of you that are not technologists, although I know, Kanchana, you are, it just means that that compute is going to be closer to the experience, which enables that ultra low latency for things like fully connected cars, where you can have that direct feedback loop with ultra low latency, so that the machines around us, as well as all of our experiences, can give that feedback loop in a much faster time frame. So I'm pretty excited about all this. I think when you combine all of these elements, faster throughput, lower latency, I think it's going to revolutionize how we think about our lives and how we think about business, whether it's in healthcare services. You and I talked about that earlier, the delivery of all business models. So back to my comment at the beginning, I do think that for all of the entrepreneurs out there, I do think we're entering a period in history where business innovation is perhaps just constrained by the limits of our imagination. And I think that's just pretty exciting with 5G.
I think that's what has come to bear is, when 4G started, we didn't even know these new businesses were going to emerge. And now we don't even know what 5G has in store for us. So it's a great time, like you said, for entrepreneurs to really think out of the box, think about innovation, think about new ideas that, great connectivity can bring. No, that is, I think the power of 5G, right, Susan, as a consumer, we're still waiting to experience the full power of it. And I'm sure I can't wait to see all of the new business ideas that are going to come out of it.
Yeah, it is this wonderful coming together, Kanchana, of the technology with the entrepreneurs. Okay, what kind of requirements does that solution require? How do we help businesses get the right platforms, the right edge solutions in place to help bring some of these new business models forward? But it is a combination of entrepreneurs coming together with great technology, and that's kind of some of the stuff that I think is exciting.
Yes, so we have some great, great ideas and great innovation, in the ecosystem here at TIE. So I'm sure everybody is really excited to hear how they can, make full use of the 5G connectivity going forward. So Susan, that was great insights. The next, I also wanted to ask you, I read an article where you're talking about the next normal. So in your view, how can the next normal be better than the old normal? Like we're all, of course, waiting for the next normal to be better, greater, happier.
Yeah, the next normal, right? Not back to the old normal.
I
You
mean,
know,
we went from the new normal. You remember the new normal. Now it's the next normal.
yeah, the next normal. You know, maybe I'll just touch on a little bit about my organization, and then I'll talk maybe on the humanistic side. You know, first of all, I'm been preaching to my team. I never want to waste a crisis. We had a crisis over the last 18 months. And I think it's helpful for us as a globe and as a people to really reflect on how can we make life better coming out of the crisis, but also for my organization, how can we get ready for the next crisis? How can we take the learning of what has brought us to our knees, quite literally, on helping deliver these solutions to our customers during this craziness, and learn and be smarter? And I do think we're trying to enhance our capabilities within the supply chain and the global access community to drive more technology and more intelligence. So a lot of the solutions that we put in place to solve our problems on, okay, what's the diverse provider solution for a factory that's been shut down? We're trying to get ahead of that with better data. So how do we have better data across business and across the globe on understanding where supply is coming from, understanding how we get more geographically diverse, and how we understand all of the complexities of the supply chain. I say that nobody, and you and I talked about this, no one used to know what a supply chain was. It was kind of just like air. You didn't realize it, or oxygen, until it was gone. Supply chain's sexy right now. Everyone's talking about it because of the COVID crisis, the borders shutting down. All of us watched the Suez Canal shut down recently, which backed up the whole shipping industry. We have got to become more resilient as a supply chain. That starts with better data, better information to get out in front of the crises before it happens. And it starts with more geographic diversity, better intelligence, better collaboration across the globe on how we solve crises before they become crises. So I'm really hoping coming out of this crisis, my organization and multiple organizations that serve AT&T will be more resilient, will be more intelligent, will be smarter the next time we go through this time of crisis. I think that is part of the benefit of sitting back and learning from what we've seen over the last 18 months. And I think out of it, we're getting more learnings from our customers about what do they need to be able to deliver business to their customers in new and unique areas and business models. And then I do think for most of us on the humanistic side, you know, there's a lot of benefits on working from remotely that I hope we're not going to lose. I think it's been more personalized. We're all seeing into each other's homes in our remote working space. I think there's a broader acceptance of working remotely. I think that is better for many of us, particularly working parents. Can you have more flexibility in your day to be able to be there for your coaching of your child in that homework session when they get home, but also then turn on your video and be there for that important meeting? I am hopeful that we're going to have more tools, more global acceptance of remote working options for parents and for people that just want the flexibility. So I am hopeful that coming out of this, it's going to encourage more women in the workforce. That's going to stay in the workforce, even with children that you've got to be there for. And I think that maybe is some of the benefits of the new normal.
I think there are a lot of benefits. Susan, we wouldn't be having you on a Zoom call if this pandemic didn't happen. We never thought about this before, right?
True. No, you're right. A lot of, and I think the other thing I'll take to that I'm really excited about is I'm big on sustainability. You know, we have got to solve this environmental problem as a globe, and with less of us getting on airplanes and less of us jumping in cars. We all saw what happened to the globe in terms of that carbon footprint and what happened with all of the travel shutting down. Some of the positives of that, Kanchana, I hope, is that we all learn that we've got options. When do we need to travel? And when can we just stay home? And when can we work together to solve some of the sustainability issues across the globe as a result of the fact that we've all got more options on working remotely?
So you have a 2035 goal, right?
We do, yeah. In fact, how do we get to zero emissions? How do we think about AT&T on really managing our carbon footprint and driving packaging and services and fuel efficient vehicles that are moving to electrical? How do we think about the entire carbon footprint of AT&T and do a better job with our carbon footprint and our zero waste goal and some of the other really things that I'm excited about?
Yeah, and to weave it into a $70 billion spend, right? I mean, I'm sure it doubles the responsibility and accountability. So that's great. So you've been personally passionate about diversity, equity, inclusion commitments. And I think the pandemic has amplified the pre-existing gaps and challenges. What do you encounter and how did you respond to deliver social value?
Kanchana, I'm back to my concept of crisis. I do find that during times of crisis, a company's core values are really exposed. And I think we need entrepreneurs and corporations to really step up and help us solve so much of these diversity and inclusion issues that we are all seeing. Luckily for AT&T, I find that my heart and my head are in the right place. AT&T's heart is a big supporter of diversity. And then I've also found in my role of supporting supplier diversity at AT&T, we're learning over and over again, Kanchana, that it makes great economic sense for the company too. We as a supplier diversity, we spent over $13 billion last year with diverse suppliers, and that's something we're really passionate about. And when we were in our crisis mode, some of our diverse suppliers stepped up the fastest to help us set up new supply chains for things like PPE. And they were the most agile and they were there for us when we really needed them. And frankly, it just goes to show that that model of both the heart and the head, our diverse suppliers were with us and they quickly responded when we needed it. We had 2 diverse suppliers that really stepped up quickly to ramp up our PPE supply chain, and I am ever grateful for that. And I think across the board, we also knew during 2020 that we needed to make a bigger commitment to the African-American community at AT&T. So we stepped up and delivered a $3.1 billion spend last year with African-American businesses. We've been really working on building that part. That's been an area that we've had less success than some of our other minority segments. So I'm thrilled about our success there. But maybe, Kanchana, the biggest gap that I think showed up with the pandemic was what we're calling at AT&T the digital divide. And I think this is a global issue. When all of us moved home to work and to school, things like computers and broadband connectivity became more important than ever. And we have many parts of the globe and many parts of the US where children did not have the connectivity they needed to be able to homeschool. And it's not fair to have people trying to stay present in a classroom and replace that teaching experience without the right tooling. So this is an area that AT&T's really stepped up on that I'm excited about. We've announced that we're making a $2 billion investment over the next 3 years to help bridge this digital divide in the US. We've got to deliver more low-cost broadband. So we are going to be putting more offers out for low-cost broadband to try to enable that connectivity to the home. And we've made big commitments to educational resources and educational opportunities and other things to really get under this problem. I view that as an urgent issue for the US, and I'm sure that is an urgent issue globally for so many parents and families that are trying to figure out how you replace that teaching experience when we are all sequestered at home.
Yeah. Susan, we discussed supply chain, 5G, FirstNet. So what does Industry 4.0 mean to individuals and organizations?
What does Industry 4.0 mean? Kanchana, that's a great question. What are we going to look like? What is the next area going to focus on? I'm passionate about diversity. I really think that we've got to tackle diversity issues. We've got to figure out how we are attacking sustainability issues is something I'm really passionate about. And so back to our conversation about 5G enablement, a lot of the technology tools I do think are going to be there to help us solve some of these problems and help us enable new business models, but also new working experiences that hopefully will be more inclusive for all of us, whether you're an entrepreneur creating a new business or whether you are just trying to figure out how to carve out a career in corporate America. How do you do things differently? How do you have more flexibility? How do you use that creativity with 5G to enable new models? I think there's so much opportunity. It's really an exciting time.
That is wonderful. So Susan, there are a lot of audience questions, so I'm sure they want to hear from you. I'm going to ask my co-host, Smita. Smita, are you there? I think you're still on mute. Yeah, okay. So if you want to ask some of the audience questions.
Absolutely. First, thank you so much, and Susan, for those awesome insights. And it is really, really nice to hear about what AT&T is doing in the new normal. So people are asking, but first, I have a question for myself, that women like you have broken the glass ceiling, and a lot has changed for women from 20 years from now to today. But the people are more accepting of women. So the more women are accepted in senior leadership. What is your advice to women entrepreneurs who are in mid-management, how to get through the barrier of breaking to get into senior leadership? Would you like to expand on that, Susan? I would love to hear your view.
Yeah, the quintessential glass ceiling. It's such a great question. I'll tell you one of the things that I'm passionate about is I have a thesis that all of women who have been lucky enough to be in positions of power in the globe, and this isn't just in corporate America, but I will focus on my career path in corporate America. I view that it is incumbent upon me and other female leaders to help those coming behind us and to try to make it easier than it was for us. I often get the question, how did I make it? How did I break through? And, I don't know how many people know about my personal story, but part of my personal success, which is sad that it took this, but my husband died when my kids were very, very little. I had a 6-month-old and a 4-year-old when my husband died. And I suddenly went from being the second income to being the only income. And I do think that one of the things that I experienced with that transition is that women have a lot of guilt of being working moms. And I had a lot of guilt. And I was comparing myself to stay-home moms. And I thought I was a horrible mother. I wasn't, researching everyone's teacher before I picked the best teacher. And I wasn't researching enough the best teams for my kids. And all of that was how I was comparing myself to other stay-home moms. And I think once my husband died, as horrible as that experience was, I changed my priorities because I realized that the most important thing I needed to do for my kids was pay the mortgage and be able to enable things for them where they did not feel constrained by not having money and support and mom there for them. And so it changed my whole lens. And so I often coach women out there, first of all, take off the mom guilt thing. If you are a working mom, just get rid of it. And then I also think that for women like us that have been lucky enough to make it to the senior ranks, and it's been a lot of luck, don't get me wrong, I hope that we are all aligned on trying to make it easier for the next generation. And my message to women always when I can sit down and have that one-on-one time with women is, think about it as a marathon, not a sprint. There are many, many, many times where I wanted to drop out and stop my career. And I have found that if I can just hang on by your fingernails, that second child is a hard one, Kind of the moves that I had to do were really hard, but if you can hang on through the really hard moments, if you can get the support from your senior leadership to have some flexibility in your workday, I think it is very doable. And I will say, having now emerged at the other end, my kids are great. They don't feel like they were cheated. As much as I was worried about that, and I do think that there is an opportunity for women to have a career and to be great moms. And I say the same coaching to men, but I coach more to women. You got to believe that's possible. And you got to believe you're not cheating your kids. And you got to believe that you can do amazing things and that you can really break through. And I think with that belief and the ability to hang on through those really hard times, you can have an amazing career. And I am lucky enough to, and thankful enough that I've been able to do that with 2 kids, raising them as a single parent for most of the time.
Right. So for mid-management women, as well as other career women, you are saying first is get rid of the mom guilt. Second, believe in yourself, and it can be done. And again, get rid of the mom guilt or the imposter syndrome that you would have, because you can do it. It's just the word, like the Thomas engine, I can do it. I can, right? So we have some great questions from the audience. So first question is from Shamima, who's the part of the management committee of Atai Women. And he is asking, with all new innovation in technologies, what opportunities does it provide to women entrepreneurs and women-founded startups? Would you expand on that, please?
Yeah, well, I'm going to go back to my movie analogy and just sort of maybe go back to the concept about, I think the imagination is going to help us see some of these new business models. I think we're at a unique situation where the technology of the network connectivity, where the cloud and the edge cloud I'm talking about are going to enable incredible new business models. So one of the things that I do coach to, my daughter and her friends about where do I see opportunity, I think embracing technology right now is more important than ever. There are so many different business models that I think are going to be enabled by new technology. And so it's one of the things that I am working on across my organization right now. I've asked every employee in my group, raise your hand if you've got a process that is time intensive and people intensive. And if you're connecting spreadsheets together, let's figure out how we build a bot. Let's figure out how we set up a platform to drive that intelligence across different connections. And let's figure out how to reimagine so many of the experiences that are important to us in our daily life. Now, retail, I touched on that. I think there is a huge opportunity for entrepreneurship in retail right now. Sustainability theme I talked about. How do we do a better job of changing the dynamic of how we all buy clothes? You walk into a store, you pick things off the rack, you go try them on in the room, and it's very time intensive. Can you imagine a scenario where, one, we are reusing clothing more often instead of sending it to a landfill? 2, you can try it on a screen at home. And can we imagine areas that are going to change that dynamic of how we all think about our basic experiences? How do you think about food? How do you think about restaurant experience? Think about everything you do in your daily life. Factories, huge innovation going on in factories. And then think about how can technology change it? And how do I think about the tools of technology that can really redefine this? All of us have seen how Google has changed the world and how Uber has changed the world. All of that just about being better connected. Think about the next incarnation of all of those models. So much opportunity.
Right. And thanks, Susan, for that. We have one of your fellow Dallasites, our Thai Dallas President Ram Vishwanathan, and he's excited that a Dallas person is on the.
All right, great.
Go Dallas, he's saying. And his question is that all the positives and tech advancements aside, which is truly exciting from a global supply chain standpoint, we have recently seen some huge shortages in capacities increase in demands, therefore unprecedented increases in global container and shipping rates. What is your take on it? How has that affected AT&T, and how in long term are these increases, considering that these will inevitably affect consumers at the point if they're not already?
Yeah, it's such a great question. So thank you for that. We all talked about the COVID crisis that hopefully we're going to see some improvements on coming out of 2021. But we've got a different set of crises going on the supply chain side. I don't know about many of you, but if you tried to order a desk, new furniture, yeah, most supply chains right now have incredibly extended lead times because of surging demand, because of the fact that shipping has really slowed down, because of the fact that there are a lot of shortages based on changes in demand. So one of the ones I'll talk about, because I'm in the middle of living through this right now, is chip shortages. Those little silicon chips that are the basics of intelligence for so many of the devices, whether it is your mobile device, whether it's your PC, whether it's your connected car. We've got a massive global shortage going on right now. And if I look out and you say, how long is that going to continue? I tell you, it's going to continue into next year. So we've got chip shortages going on. We've got capacity constraints on shipping and distribution and truckers and ports and containers. And so this is back to my point about supply chain used to be really boring. It's super sexy now. Everybody wants to know, when am I getting my stuff? And I do think that it is back to my point about how do we do better at forecasting as an industry? How do we get better intelligence on where goods and services are coming from? How do we get more diversity in terms of the distribution, shipping, and trucking channels to try to figure out how we route around some of these congestion points? It's going to be a long year. For those of you that are waiting for at-home desks or computers or new devices, we are going to struggle more this year. And so I have to kind of laugh at that question, because that is about what I'm spending 50% of my time on these days. When am I getting my stuff, right? Whether you're a consumer or a business, it is a hot topic.
It is. And that, you know, that we have global audience, we have people from India too. So it's interesting. One of them is asking, Mayank from India is asking, we are talking about resilient supply chains and that recover after disruption. But have you experienced some suppliers that have collapsed, that they could not recover the disruption caused by the COVID pandemic? And what are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I think there have been a lot of industries that have fallen down on their knees. And you guys are probably watching that as much as I am. So I'll start with just maybe an industry perspective. Tourism, for any country or any part of the globe that's been pulling in a lot of money on tourism, it's been a real problem. For the restaurant industry, the hotel industry, all of those have been horribly hurt. For some of my suppliers, they've had extensive times of factory shutdown, and some of them have had to lay people off, and some of them have had to rethink their whole employee model and payroll. But what I will say is a positive. So yes, I've had a lot of suppliers that have really suffered. I've had a couple of suppliers that have really fallen down and failed during this troubling time. But what I love to watch right now, back to this, I'm lucky enough to talk to all of these innovative entrepreneurs, is watching the entrepreneurship, which I think is the heart and soul of business globally. And watching how entrepreneurs and creative people are solving problems to change business models, I think is part of the exciting time. I watched, I had a couple of suppliers that started delivering hand sanitizer for us that used to be beer or alcohol manufacturers. So talk about a pivot on a dime. I had one particular supplier that within a month changed from making a lot of alcohol to making a lot of hand sanitizer. And I have found that there are a lot of suppliers that have figured out call center suppliers. They couldn't open up call centers. How to figure out, okay, how do I move all of my call center workers home? How do I make sure that customer privacy and the connectivity is still there and the access to the customer information when they call? So a lot of innovation that I think is exciting, particularly for this group, because I think the faster you pivot as an entrepreneur or an intrapreneur to respond to that crisis and changing your business model, I think has really set companies apart in terms of those that have come out of the crisis better and stronger, and those that have really fallen down, done a faceplant, not survived.
Right, right. Absolutely. And that is a good segue is to like now you have mostly remote teams you mentioned. And this is the last question because we are just going over time is how do you keep the remote teams engaged? Means part of AT&T has become remote. You hire new people, everybody's remote, and how will the work culture change? So
Yeah, that's we're all struggling with that. We are all struggling with that. So I will say I've learned a couple things. I used to do something called get on an airplane and travel to see my people. And it used to be a really important job. I'd travel out to my distribution centers. I'd travel out to all of my locations. I've got people all over the globe. And I used to make it a priority for me to get on the plane and go out and see people and get some face-to-face time to build relationships. I think one of the good things coming out of COVID is we've all gotten better about turning our cameras on. And I do think in a remote situation where you're turning your camera on, I'm now doing small group sessions with all my employees. It doesn't matter whether you're in India, whether you're in Italy, whether you're in Bratislava, we can all turn our cameras on. We can have a small group session. We can talk about culture. We can talk about how working from home is going for you. And we can have that personal interaction. And so one of the positives coming out of COVID is how do we change the culture where people feel more comfortable working remotely, but how do we keep that personal connection? And I have come down to the fact that it's not quite as good as being in person, but turning your camera on, and Smith, as I sit here and look at you, I feel like I'm getting personal time with you. I'm getting to know you. We're seeing expressions, we're seeing hand motions. I do think that that personal connection is more important than ever. So I am reaching out every week. I have a small group session with a different set of my team coming from all over the globe. Less than 30 people, let's have a conversation. What's working, what's not? Give me some feedback. How is our culture changing? What do we need to change to empower faster decision-making? And I'm finding that's one of the really good things coming out of COVID is that personal time, even when it's still staring at a screen.
wonderful. Awesome insights, Susan. I could keep talking to you and ask you more questions, but unfortunately, we are short in time. I would like to turn it back to Kanchana. And Kanchana, and thank you so much, Susan, for being here.
Thank you. Honored to be here.
Susan, thank you. It's such an insightful session, and thank you for inspiring our entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs to think about innovation, you know, in the 5G world and how 5G is paving the way for the fourth industrial revolution. And again, educating us on supply chain, you know, robotic surgery, IoT, edge computing. So appreciate it. Thank you so much. I know you have a super busy schedule, and we are extremely grateful for this time with you.
And Kanchana, thank you. And to all you entrepreneurs out there, go change the world. I'm going to be watching.
Thank you. Take care. Good luck.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. We have a lot of